The camera that wasn't in the system, I worked the night shift as a security guard in an office building just outside the city. During the day, the building was full of people. Hundreds of employees moved through the halls, elevators constantly opened and closed, and phones rang everywhere. But after midnight, the place felt completely different. The offices were empty, the hallways were silent, and the only sounds were the humming of the ventilation system and the occasional creaking of the building settling at night. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Most nights were incredibly boring. I sat in the security room watching the camera monitors, drinking coffee, and doing a patrol around the building once every hour. There were 8 cameras in the system, one watching the front entrance, one covering the parking lot, two facing the elevators, three monitoring the main hallways, and one covering the back exit. Nothing unusual ever happened until one night. It was around 2:17 a.m. when I noticed something strange. I looked at the wall of monitors like I always did, and immediately something felt wrong. There were 9 camera windows on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, confused. That wasn't possible. There were only supposed to be 8 cameras. At first, I assumed the system had glitched. Sometimes the software froze or duplicated a screen. But this wasn't a duplicate. The 9th camera was showing a place I had never seen before. It was a hallway, a long one, gray walls, flickering lights on the ceiling, old linoleum flooring, and the hallway stretched much farther than any corridor in the building should. It disappeared into darkness at the end. I leaned forward in my chair. I had worked in that building for almost 6 months. I had walked every hallway, every floor, every stairwell. But I had never seen this corridor. I opened the camera control panel on the computer. The list of cameras appeared. There were still 8 cameras registered in the system, but on the monitor wall, there were 9. And the 9th camera kept showing that strange hallway. I watched it for several minutes. Nothing moved. The hallway was completely empty. Eventually, I leaned back and convinced myself it was just a system bug. Old security systems sometimes acted weird. I decided I would report it to maintenance in the morning, but a few minutes later, something changed. At the far end of the hallway, something moved. At first, I thought it was just a flickering light, but then I saw it again. Someone was walking down the corridor. Slowly, very slowly. My stomach tightened. The building was locked. No one should have been inside except me. I leaned closer to the monitor. The person was walking toward the camera, step by step. As they moved under the flickering lights, the figure became clearer. At first, it was just a silhouette, but then I noticed something strange. They were wearing a security uniform, a black jacket, a radio on the belt, the exact same uniform I was wearing. A cold feeling spread through my chest. That made no sense. I was the only guard working that night. The figure kept walking closer. The lights flickered again, and for a second the camera showed the person's face. My heart nearly stopped. It was me. Same face, same haircut, same uniform. I stood up so quickly my chair rolled back into the wall. My first thought was that someone had hacked the camera feed. Maybe it was a recording. Maybe someone was playing a prank. But when I looked back at the screen, the figure had stopped. It was standing directly in front of the camera, just staring. Then something even worse happened. The radio on my belt crackled. Static filled the room. Then a voice came through, but it didn't sound normal. It sounded distorted, almost like a whisper, and it said 3 words. Turn around. My blood went cold. Slowly, I turned in my chair. Behind the glass door of the security room was the hallway outside. The lights were dim, but I could see someone standing there, right outside the door, watching me. I froze, because I already knew what I was about to see. It was the same person from the camera, the same uniform, the same face, my face. The radio crackled again. The voice whispered one last sentence. You shouldn't have seen that camera. Suddenly, every monitor in the room went black. The lights flickered violently. Then the entire security room went dark. A few seconds later, the lights came back on. The monitors restarted. The system showed 8 cameras again. The ninth camera was gone. The hallway outside the security room was empty, and the strange corridor had disappeared. I never saw that camera again. My shift ended a few hours later. I tried to convince myself the whole thing had been some kind of technical glitch, but something about it didn't feel right. When I left the building that morning, I noticed something strange. At the far end of the third floor hallway, there was a door. A door I was absolutely sure had never been there before. And on the door was a small metal sign. It said, Camera Room 9. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. I finished my shift and went home. I tried to forget about it, but a few hours later my phone vibrated. It was a notification from the building's security app. I stared at the message on the screen. Motion detected. Camera 9. My heart started racing. Camera 9 didn't exist. Slowly, I opened the image. The picture loaded. It showed the security room, the same room where I had been sitting all night, and someone was sitting in my chair, wearing my uniform, looking directly at the camera. It was me, but I had left the building hours ago. I felt sick. My hand started shaking and I dropped the phone onto the couch. At that moment, my daughter ran into the living room. She was laughing. "Dad, do you want to play?" I forced myself to smile and tried to calm down. I picked her up and held her in my arms. "Sure," I said. "What do you want to play?" She looked at me for a few seconds. Then she smiled, but something about that smile felt wrong. And in a quiet voice, she said,
Let's play. Camera Room 9.